Hey, Tommy, how are you?
A little depressed. A little depressed.
What would you have to be depressed with? You're the great and powerful Tom Waddle.
Well, I'm also a fan of my favorite franchise, and it is a complete dumpster fire right now.
I don't let them affect my
Oh,
mood.
yeah, you do. You just a big bag of wind with that statement.
That is correct.
I mean, come on.
Or most
By the
things
way,
about the Cubs.
let me pick a. Sorry about that, but I got a bad cold. You gave the Bears a C- in their running game. You don't get anything higher than a D.
Okay.
How can you give them a C-?
He was trying to be nice.
Well,
Is that-
I think that their offensive line has been horrifically bad.
They have.
And my favorite football player, sorry, Yerk, but it's Waddle. My favorite Bear football player, Tommy Waddle, told us before the season, very concerned about the O-line. I was not as concerned. Tommy was right. And I think DeAndre Swift had his moments. Caleb has run the ball fairly well, so I gave him a C-.
Well, yeah, that's not. No, that's. I'd want to be in your class if you're teaching it, because there's no way you get anything higher in a D because of what you just described. Their offensive line has been a disaster. You realize the last 4 weeks.
Okay,
backs,
D. I'll give him a D.
Okay,
You
good.
happy now?
Because I am because I think that this is where. I think they need to look in the mirrors up at Hallis Hall and give themselves a D instead of, blaming coaches and pointing fingers and assume some responsibility. They've had 234 rushing yards in the last 4 weeks from their running backs and wide receivers. That's 59 yards per game. That's 3.4 yards per carry. They've given up 56 sacks. They're on pace for 73 sacks. Come on, guys. That's incredible. And I'm just pissed. And I don't normally get this way, but I'm just probably because I got a little bit of a cold. But this is just a disaster. Watching the first 2.5 quarters of that game on film after listening to the fellas,
He turned it off.
I turned it off. I couldn't watch it anymore.
Well, yeah.
Jonathan, I was expecting to see a group that came. You got what you want, and we talked about this last week. The boogeymen were out of the building, so now my expectation was guys were going to play like they've played the last couple of years and kind of progress to the mean. And I got to tell you, first drive, 49ers shoved it down their throat, and you get an assignment miss on the touchdown pass. And if you didn't want to throw it to Juwan Jennings, there was another guy in the end zone that was wide ass open because they blew a coverage. They get the ball back on the second play. Cole Kmet does the cardinal sin of any offensive people. You never let a player wearing another jersey cross your face, even if you're supposed to get the guy behind him. You don't let him cross your face. And they make an assignment miss. And instead of having a third and short, you're at second or you're at third and long again. And you can't have these types of mistakes, especially after what you've asked for is for people to hold you accountable and to coach you harder. And we need a change at the coaching position. And then you come out and do that. The 49ers gained 319 yards and scored 24 points in the first half. The Bears had 4 yards and no points. And I'm supposed to be, excited about anything attached to this team?
Yeah. I want to ask you about
Okay, I apologize. My bad.
No, it's exactly how we all feel about what we've been seeing with this team because of the expectations, whether it was lofty or in the middle, whatever, for them to look like that, a plate of piss right in front of everybody is pretty brutal. So I agree
That
with you,
was
Tommy.
good.
Well, it's what it is, Cap.
That's messy, too.
Well, you have
if
to
that's
see-
on a plate, you're
It
getting
just
it all
spills
over.
over the edges.
Well, Cap, you speak to where it is, right?
Yeah.
You speak to where it is. So
You're right.
I just want to know about the defense in that first half that you talked about because we were talking about it. I was going to reach out to you, and I am now asking you about the defense. And was Eric Washington mistaken? Was it a player situation? Why was the defense so behind?
It's such a great point. They got out-coached, they got out-schemed, they got outworked, they got out-executed. So I guess the answer, Jonathan, would be all the above. Now, I said this last night with Kap, too, though. I'm willing to give Thomas Brown and Eric Washington a little bit of a break because what you've asked them to do is something they weren't brought in here to do, at least this year. So while it was a complete train wreck and everyone needs to wear it, this is what happens when you ask guys out. Kap has said this a bunch. 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, Thomas was your passing game coordinator and had really no contact with your quarterback, which was the statement from the quarterback. 3 weeks later, he's calling plays. Now he's the interim head coach. I was an advocate of keeping him in the booth and letting him work on the offense, not because I didn't think he could do the job, but because I thought that managing this young quarterback and getting him to be the best he can be was the most important aspect of this entire team. The point I'm getting to with regard to the defense, Jonathan, is now you've asked Eric Washington to call defensive plays for the first time in a regular season game in 5 or 6 years. Like, I'm not saying he's not a good coach, but you've put these guys into position where you're asking them to do something 12 games into a season that they haven't done. And missed assignments. Like, I could send you some clips of stuff. Like, Tyreek Stevenson's out of position for the first touchdown. I have no idea what they're doing. There's coverage breaks. There's a business decision that doesn't sit real well or shouldn't sit real well with anybody out there in the second half on the Garendo second touchdown run. But it was just it was surgical, Jonathan. If you look at what Kyle Shanahan did with scheme. I mean, you saw it as clearly as I did. How do guys get that wide open?
Were they playing for the run? Roger Craig's not out there.
You're right. Like, in there, some of them are basic, and you know this because this is what they do, Jonathan. They run the football. They do play action, and Purdy's not the most elusive guy in the world. So you can't be all in. I know it's hard because they do run the ball well, but, their tendencies are their tendencies. And you see, Kittle running these deep crossers with nobody near him. And you're like, is that a blown assignment or is that a bad defensive look for what you thought you were going to get? And, I said to you guys last week, I wasn't sure which 49ers team you were going to see. Despite being very well coached and talented, they'd gotten boat raced in Green Bay. They got boat raced in Buffalo. Who would they be? They come home with just a glimmer of hope for an outside shot at a playoff chance. Who would they be? Would they stiffen their spine like the championship organization that they are and make the most of this opportunity? Or would they wilt and kind of write their own eulogy because they know this isn't their year because of all of the different injuries and all of, they've had some personal tragedy. And the stark differences between the two organizations was on full display in Santa Clara on Sunday.
Yeah.
You had a team who had its back against the wall at 5-7, just a glimmer of hope for a postseason. And they came out and played mistake-free. Garendo was the best running back on the field. Everyone in a 49er uniform was better at their jobs than what the Bears were. And you had a Bears team 4-8 that got what they wanted with their coach being fired and an opportunity to rally and kind of,
And didn't show up.
And they didn't show up, guys. And it's why, like, I've kind of, shame on me. Part of it is shame on me to think that, because I knew this coach wasn't the answer to start the season, and I said it. I knew the offensive line wasn't good enough, and I said it. And I knew they didn't have enough pass rush. But my dumbass decided that because I'm going to drink some Bears Kool-Aid, that this team's going to win 10 games and possibly sneak into the postseason. This is who they are, and it's frustrating. And, I'm not trying to – but this is – like, guys, they want to be held accountable, right? They want to be coached harder. I'm not your coach, and maybe I'm not the guy to hold you accountable, but if they ever got pissed at me for being critical of them, I tell them, this is what you wanted, right? You wanted people to point out your mistakes?
You wanted to be held accountable.
I just, I don't know. I wasn't frustrated, really, before I hooked into the machine over here. But – I don't know why, but
kind of machine you hooking into?
It's moonshine, and it's a still.
It's a Comrex, That's what it is.
Oh, I thought it was the moonshine still,
or an IV of some
sort.
I'm
telling you, I could use a drink right now. This is as frustrated as I've been in a long time. It really is because, you tell me how we're going to pull ourselves out of this. Tell me.
Kara, pull out the moonshine. This hurts.
All right, we'll have more with the great Tom Waddle.
Tommy, it's the Minnesota Vikings that's been on a roll. Yeah. I see the number here. And I wonder on the Waddle line, would you have it at 7? Because it has the Vikings a 7-point favorite.
Yeah, I would, at least. Because I think they're a different beast in their building than they are on the road. Like, that place gets loud and crazy. And, when you can't control the snap count, Tom Thayer does a great job talking about this all the time. When you're at home, especially with a young quarterback, and an offensive line that's shaky, is if you can control the snap count and your guys aren't, you're not going on a silent count, it gives you a little bit more of an advantage. I thought Caleb really handled the pressure from Flores very well when they met at Soldier Field. It's harder when you get in their building. Look, the way that they came out and played and the effort they gave, I put it at 9. Like, to be honest with you, if they come out and play hard, then they can cover that number. But if they come out and give you the effort that they gave against the 49ers, then they won't come close to covering that number, I don't believe. And I would say this as well, too, and as I was Captain Negative before the break, I will tell you this, though. I am beyond, optimistic about the young quarterback because he can play. Is he perfect? No. Does he take sacks that he shouldn't take at times? Yes. Does he complete every pass? No. But the kid is a player. He's the most mature guy in the building when the cameras are on, which is concerning in some ways and comforting in other ways. But I think that kid is got the ability to be a really special player for a really long time, and that's kind of what I'm clinging to.
Tommy, in looking at Minnesota and a guy like Brian Flores, he's going to get looks to be a head coach. Mike Tomlin said a couple of weeks ago, the best head coach candidate in the world that is not a head coach today is Brian Flores. What do you think of him?
Well, his track record speaks for itself in terms of his ability to motivate guys and get a defense tuned up. Look, he does have some skeletons with regard to how he handled the Tua situation. I am a big believer that everyone deserves a second opportunity to do the same thing. Maybe he's learned from that. Maybe his people skills are a little more refined now, and that wouldn't be an issue. I think he'll be on a lot of people's radar, and I think people want to bring him in and talk to him and, see what his perspective is now, several years after being the head coach down in Miami. I don't, to be honest with you, despite him being a BC guy, I don't know him at all, and I don't know a ton about him other than what I've seen on TV. I know his defenses are ready to play, and, he and Vic Fangio are probably the two most creative and exotic defensive play callers in the league. So I think he'll be given another opportunity. At least he'll be given the opportunity to interview for sure.
It's interesting, guys. If you are Shanahan watching the Bears, and I know that we covered Shanahan. Could you imagine Shanahan in a Bears cap? And it's kind of like he looks over on the other side and goes, I don't want to be part of that.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think Brian Flores thinks on the other side?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so I want to be head coach again, and I see that defense and go, or our linebackers are just okay, and the secondary is not willing, even though talented, not willing to listen, and we don't have much of a pass rush. Flores wants to coach again, but the same thing with Shanahan. I think Flores also looks at the Bears outfit and goes, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, did you see Barstool Carl tweeted? I think it was Barstool Carl, might have been Barstool Chief, tweeted, he said, we're going to get the guy who's kicking our ass across the way so he can live in Winnetka and sit on the Edens in traffic. Yeah, okay.
You know what, Jonathan, I think it's such a great point because everyone, I think this is a good job. I'm probably overvaluing it because of the lack of continued success or any success over the course of the last several decades. Hell, they haven't had 3 consecutive winning seasons. I heard Carm say this the other day, since the 80s. I think those that are in demand, the top candidates, whether it's Vrabel, it's Ben Johnson, or it's Brian Flores, I think they're vetting the teams that are vetting them just the same way.
Yeah, Ben Johnson's like, hold on a second.
Right.
Now, I can look at a bunch of different situations. You want me to go where and do what? And when I had spoken to someone close to Ben, he said, look, it's not about the money. He's going to get paid well. Don't believe that he's asking for $15 million because he's not. He'll get paid big if he wins on his second deal. But he said he's not hitching his wagon to somewhere that continually makes mistakes and won't figure out why or try to fix them.
Yeah, and that's the point, Jonathan. Like you said, I think it's every bit as important for these candidates to vet the Bears and become comfortable with how they feel the organization would be run if they took the job as opposed to the Bears vetting them and deciding who's best to lead their team. I think it's a two-way street, no doubt.
I understand, Kap, Waddle, that athletes are like anybody else. They have a place to live and they have a job to go to. But the idea that we have this rash of break-ins, Joe Burrow has his home broken into. Hey, man, you can afford Rottweilers. You can afford security. I mean, the young lady that was in Burrow's home said, is on the 911 call, my home's being broken into. Your home. I thought it was Joe's home. All I know is this.
And she's a swimsuit model.
And that's fine, but it's like, oh, I guess they're together, which is fine. That's not the point. I guess my point is, Tommy, is that, and God bless them that they're together. I mean, it's outstanding.
Yeah.
But just the idea that, man, you need some security.
Yeah.
People know it's a big, glaring red light on your home. Hey, Joe's playing right now. There's no one in his home. Let's break into it.
Yeah.
Get some security, for God's sake.
That's the bigger
you
issue.
You got the money.
Not who actually is on the deed, but actually trying to find some. And it's happened. It happened to some NBA players a month ago, I think, as well. It happened, obviously, to Mahomes. It happened to Kelsey.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, we've talked about this a bunch and don't understand why, especially when you're going – even when you're – I think some of the guys on the Chiefs, their places got broken into even when they were playing in KC.
Correct.
So if you're going to be away, these thieves know when you're going to be away. So, have Moose and Rocco at the front door when you're playing.
Yeah, come on in. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Who are you guys?
All you got to
and
do,
Rocco.
guys, listen, one incident, I got to be careful here. One incident where a suspected burglar comes into your home and meets resistance, I'll just talk it that way, and all of this stuff will stop.
That's exactly right.
Do you know what I mean?
And let it leak, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Let TMZ know about it.
Yeah.
You're not coming to my home. It was a really nice part of Cincinnati.
Yeah.
In the suburbs where Burrow lives. It's just wide open and people can steal stuff from his home. That's not right.
No.
Get some security, for God's sakes. You're Joe
You
Burrow.
walk in the house, and guess what ends up happening? A couple of guys take you down to the wine cellar and teach you the meaning of the word respect and then let you go, and then that won't happen ever again.
And now, Shay, it's the movie Celtic Pride.
Damn.
It's Goodfellas.
Yeah,
No, Casino.
Yeah.
Remember they took him in the back room?
Nazis can't leave.
That's it.
I didn't see Celtic Pride.
It's one of the worst movies
Is
of
it
all
bad?
time. When two guys try to capture a Celtic and they keep him in the
really?
basement. Yeah, I think Damon Wayans was in that.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Because you just need like the chair that spins 360 degrees and a lamp in the living room.
It wasn't
So
one of these.
They
It wasn't
break
one
in, you just spin.
Matt Damon, Casey Affleck, buddies movies, is it? No.
It is not. Man, I'll tell you what.
Hey, I know we got to go, Tommy, but congratulations.
What happened?
They named, I guess, I don't know if it's your brother, your cousin, Valpo, right now having a press conference to announce Andy Waddle is the new head coach of Valpo
There we go.
football.
Wow.
Good job,
Congratulations. I have no idea who Andy is.
Good
He was
job.
the coach at Marietta for a long time in Marietta, Ohio.
It's
So
not
I'm
a-
sure
it's-
there's a link
Yeah,
there.
It's really not a a common name, that's for sure.
Andy Waddle, two-time Ohio Athletic Conference Coach of the Year.
23andMe. Check it out.
There you go. Maybe you can get a gig.
Tommy is going to be working with Carmen today from 12 to 3. So,
Yes.
Tommy, we'll hear you then.
You got it, guys. Thanks for having me as always.
Appreciate you. Feel better.